Hey everybody, Chris Peters here, and welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast presented by Wonderful Pistachios. I am joined as always by my co-host Cam Robinson. And boy, Cam, it is about as good a time to be a hockey fan as there has ever been. My goodness, are you having fun in Boston, my friend?
I am having fun all over this great continent of ours here these last week or so. Um, this has been fantastic. It's been fantastic. The timing, the level of play, the political discourse surrounding the sport, it's everything you could have asked for. It's a perfect storm, and we've had just a tremendous time covering it. I mean, I hope everybody's having a great time watching it from home too. It's been more than I could have ever imagined for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. So, of course, we are talking about the Four Nations face off. Everything has been happening. We are recording a day earlier than we normally do in order to talk about the upcoming game between USA and Canada. And Cam, as I mentioned, we're brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. We're pumped to have them on as our title sponsor. And hockey fans, delicious meat, nutritious, cracking a good source of protein with tasty, healthy, wonderful pistachios. Each 1 ounce serving of wonderful pistachios contains 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% over 10% of your daily value. It's one of the highest protein nuts out there. And Cam, you're going to need to have your energy on Thursday night because it's going to be Canada versus USA. Four Nations face off is on the line. The championship of all championships involving four nations. Cam, let's talk about it. Before we get to the actual championship game, we got to talk about the first edition of this game. How often have we seen 3 fights in 9 seconds in an NHL game, let alone an international game? Frankly, doesn't happen. But we saw it on the first night, and you were in the building. Just give me a sense of what the cacophony of noise, the energy, the buzz, how it felt just sitting in your seat in the press box at the Bell Center as chaos reigned supreme to start USA versus Canada.
I'll say this: I certainly was not sitting in my seat during that. I tweeted it out. I was like, you know how you're not supposed to cheer on press row? It's probably a written rule, but it's definitely an unwritten rule. Literally everybody was standing and was like, "Oh my goodness!" It was insane. The energy. I was 10 feet away from the American Scratches and some of their executives, and we're all looking at each other like they were blown away too. Billy Guerin and those guys, like everybody was just, it was electric, goosebumps sort of thing to get that kind of infusion of energy into a building and into a game. The players were so fired up, you could see it. And then, I was sitting watching morning skate this morning, like just to put into perspective how great a week this has been for me. I'm sitting there with Mark Messier, Kevin Bieksa, Ron McLean, Emily Kaplan, and we're just talking. And Mess said, he's like, everyone's talking about how great those first three 10 seconds were, but the rest of the game was maybe the most skilled, fastest game of hockey that has ever been played. And so now we've got round two coming up here, and now everything's on the line. Right before that, it didn't matter. It really didn't matter in the end who won or lost. It was a setup game. Now everything's on the line, and now I'm not expecting 3 fights in 10 seconds, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw some more fisticuffs and just some more electric stuff and the physicality and everything that's going to be expected. It should be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, the intensity is what it's all about. And it kind of brings me to this point. When we talked about this tournament, whether or not it was going to matter, whether or not it was going to make a difference, whether it was going to help grow the game, what I think, and you said this from the outset, the players care, right? And by the players caring, by the guys that said, you know what, we've been waiting 9 years for this, we've been waiting for this opportunity, we're not going to let it pass us by. And they brought the level of intensity that was required of this event. The tournament was only going to be as serious as the players took it, and the players took it as seriously as a heart attack. And that has led to injuries and all of these other things that have actually impacted now NHL seasons. But these are the sacrifices that unfortunately nobody wants to have to make them, but these are the sacrifices that have to be made in order to make something like this possible. It can only be played at its most intense. And we saw it. You know what? The thing I love, so obviously you knew Matthew Tkachuk was going to be involved. You knew Brady Tkachuk was going to be involved. It was a pretty good bet that JT Miller was going to be involved as well. And then you go back to the 1996 World Cup of Hockey and the first game between Canada and the US. Canada actually, or USA won that game as well. 20 seconds into the game, Keith Tkachuk and Bill Guerin, who is now the general manager of Team USA, got into a fight. Both two separate fights where you had Keith Tkachuk going head-to-head with Claude Lemieux and Bill Guerin going with Keith Primo to start a hockey game. And so it's funny how history has repeated itself and the lessons that were taken there. But in the end, as you mentioned, you get away from the fights and you say, what is this pace? How does this exist? And even, Brad Marchand said this is the best American team that he's played, and he's played against them in World Cups and Olympics and all those other things. So it's an absolutely remarkable feat that we have gotten this now. And what an incredible opportunity we have on Thursday night as these two teams get going back together. So, Cam, I want to get back to talking about kind of the procedural things, like Charlie McAvoy is out for Team USA. That's not good. Cale Makar is back in for Canada. That's great for Canada. Quinn Hughes, we don't know. We keep hearing it. Oh, he's on his way. So USA hasn't had enough injuries to replace the players and bring in Quinn Hughes, although that would be a great WWE style moment where, you just, the lights go down and then the glass breaks and that's Stone Cold Quinn Hughes' music coming out. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen, but that does set things up. I mean, things change. You lose a Charlie McAvoy and you gain a Cale Makar in this game on opposite sides of it. That's a pretty big swing. And so now it creates an added level of tension in this game where USA is at a disadvantage and Canada is back to, full strength. Obviously they lost Shea Theodore, but they're basically back at full strength.
Yeah, I mean, where to start with that? So yes, from my understanding, like we're not going to see Quinn Hughes unless something happens in the next, like 12 hours, maybe, right? Like maybe overnight, because we know Brady Tkachuk, he wasn't at morning skate this morning when I was at the rink. The word is body is fine. Now he's sick. Okay, I reported yesterday, Team Sweden was just absolutely decimated by the flu. It wasn't a little bug going around. Like guys were like dehydrated, weakened, like really ravaged by this thing, and terrible timing, right? But it's been sprinkling around this tournament, right? Like Makar had it, and now we're talking. Now we're hearing that Brady has it. We don't know to the level, but so there is a world where someone does get sick and can't go, and they race Quinn over here, Bobby Boucher style, and the water boy coming in at halftime to take down the championship. I can't remember the team name there, the Mud Dogs or something. Water boy reference. Yeah. So, I mean, talking about Charlie McAvoy and Shea Theodore and these guys that are out and they're going to have their seasons impacted, I feel really bad for Charlie McAvoy. He played so well. He injured that shoulder, the AC joint against Finland. Got treatment with Team USA, ends up in Mass Gen here with an infection and like a pretty bad AC joint. Not sure the Bruins are going to be so stoked with Team USA and how they handled him. I'm sure he wanted to continue playing, obviously, and to miss this in his home rink here in TD Gardens is going to be really tough for him. Shea Theodore is probably going to miss the rest of the regular season, but the players signed up for this, right? Brandon Hagel said like he was lying in bed the night, before coming, being like, am I going to stand out like a sore thumb? Because I'm going to run my head through a wall. Like I'm not taking this like lying down. Like this isn't an all-star game. So the players knew they were coming to play and play hard. And that's what happens. This is basically playoff hockey. I was texting with a couple GMs and I was like, how nervous are you going to be in future years sending your best players in the middle of the season to go play on one of these things? And, one guy said, he's just like, it's tough. Like it hurts. It's basically playoff hockey where guys are constantly getting injured and they're playing through injuries because they want to continue on, which, often lengthens the time that they're out. He's like, but at the same time, how great has this been for the game of hockey? Like for the fans and for us, like everybody watching it, it's been so good, but it's been like the timing of it all has been, it's really like kind of grabbed a hold of the North American sports scene, right? Football just ended. NBA was on their all-star break, which was terrible and has been ridiculed compared to what hockey's been doing. Before March Madness, like it's been a perfect storm And so it's really grown the game. And so even the GMs are recognizing, like, yeah, it sucks. We might lose some of our best players for a stretch drive, but big picture, this is good for hockey.
Yeah, great for hockey. And I think, it's one of those things where we have got to be somewhat and it's easy for us to say as the people watching the games, but those teams almost have to be unselfish in that there is a greater good that this can achieve. And I think that we've seen it. The fact that the NBA All-Star game was an absolute afterthought, I still don't know what happened in it. And I mean, I consider myself a big sports fan. Yes, hockey's my number one, but I didn't even realize it was going on, to be quite frankly, to be quite honest with you. So, so you have that kind of in the situation as well. But yes, I mean, the timing and everything worked out. But now you really have to, you had that one game. How does the next game live up to the hype when there's actually some, more stakes in this game, where it's like, hey, if you want to see USA Canada playing for a championship, I mean, this is the first time we're going to get to see them playing for a championship since 2010. Since we did have an Olympic semifinal in 2014, but like as far as the world class people, this is going to be it. You go back to the 1996 World Cup of Hockey. That was a best of 3 series. Canada won the first game. USA won the next 2. That was the first major win for USA over Canada in a best on best. I think there's only 4 total wins in the best on best for USA, including the game that we just had the other night, the 3-1 win for Team USA. So, Cam, let's talk about it. When we look at these two teams on paper, and we know now that the injuries are the injuries, and there are different things there, you've got USA's forwards versus Canada's forwards, and we're just going to go by position groups here. Who are you giving the edge based on what we've seen in this tournament, based on what we know from the body of work of these players? Who has the edge there? And let's just assume that Brady Tkachuk is going to play, because I think you're probably going to have to pry him, away from the team if he's unable to go. What does it look like now? I mean, this has been a great debate, just watching it all unfold these last few days.
Yeah. So for the forwards, I think pure offense, the Americans have some super duper stars, but they can't touch Connor McDavid, Nate McKinnon, and then, arguably Cale Makar at the top of his game too. We're talking offense, and then, experience and leadership, I think you give the edge to Canada as well. But then you add in that snarl factor, that hard skill factor, that heavy skill, right? And then the Americans, that's where they take it. But overall, I would give the edge to Canada offensively, just on the skill and the experience and the leadership that they have. And the fact that, Austin Matthews has been pretty quiet. Jack Hughes has really been limited. His effectiveness, just there's no time and space, right? Like until you play at this level, you don't know how to do it. And you can see some of these guys that don't have the experience at it. It's that there is literally no time and space for these guys to operate. And so a player like Hughes, he needs a little bit of space. And so he hasn't been generating very much at all. So, that's kind of helping give the edge to Canada, I think. But for me, I think, yeah, overall edge to Canada, but you played this game 100 times. It could be 50-50 each, right? Like, so the Americans have the guys, they have the runners that can do it. And I, like you, think Brady will be there. They had Kyle Connor I'll just slide this in there. They had Kyle Connor in Brady's spot and line rushes today, which is interesting. Connor started up there with Tkachuk in the first game and quickly got bounced off a bit. Usually you'd have your scratch in that placeholder spot. So it'd be really interesting to see if they end up scratching Kyle Connor instead of Chris Kreider in this final game, because that's kind of what they're lining it up for right now.
Yeah, and honestly, Cam, I wouldn't be shocked if that's the way it is. I've thought that Kyle Connor, I actually really liked how he played against Sweden. I thought he played some of his best, more aggressive against Sweden, gave himself a chance. But obviously Kreider comes in with his hair on fire. He gives you size and strength. And I thought in that Canada game, you could see a little bit of the Kyle Connor. He's not the physically strongest guy. He's got that goal scoring ability, but in this 1-to-1 game, I would probably be surprised if Chris Kreider isn't in the lineup. And so when you look at it, I'm going to agree with you. I think that you got to give the edge to Canada for the McDavid and the McKinnon factor. And then you also have Sidney Crosby in an elimination game, just a completely different animal, it feels like. So you've got those kinds of things. But as you noted, the the gap has narrowed so significantly where you kind of look back to those older times of even to 2010. I mean, Canada's forwards versus USA's forwards was a night and day difference in terms of the quality that they had versus what USA had. And I think that really it was Ryan Miller who kind of helped keep them afloat a lot in those games against Canada. But then you would have some of those depth players like a Ryan Kessler or Ryan Callahan that were doing the little things that help you win. And I think USA has guys like that, including a Chris Kreider, who's just by sheer size and speed is going to give them a potential strength advantage. But the thing is, if you cut, or, if you scratch Kyle Connor, that's a perennial 30 to 40 goal scorer left off. So a lot of different factors there. But I think that in terms of, the structure of Canada's roster is especially with those forwards does make it a little bit interesting. But how heavy Team USA's forwards played in that first game against Canada, it could come down to style of play. When, how many times, Cam, in our lives have we seen a U.S. team, they didn't bully Canada, but they gave them everything they could handle on the physical side of the game. That is a difference, I feel like, than in more recent years. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like that the heaviness was notable.
Oh, without a doubt. And, Canada was game, right? For the most part, they were their players were game. Like, Bennett was throwing his weight around a lot. Hagel was in there mucking it up too. The defense, they were throwing it around too. But up front, like Team Canada, they're small, right?
Yeah.
I think McKinnon might be their heaviest guy up front. And it's like, he's not there to bang, right? So it's like leaving a guy like Tom Wilson at home. Mark Scheifele's a big body. Those type of players, I mean, but Wilson is kind of the clear one that you would be like, he's almost a deterrent, and he plays and he can handle himself out there too. So they don't have those guys where USA has. They've got Brady, they've got Matt, they've got JT, they've got Kreider, they've got a lot of big, heavy men up front, and even some of their, Austin Matthews is a big man too, right?
Yeah.
So they do have a lot. They have this clear size advantage, and they know it, and they are looking to run around a little bit, especially on that Canadian blue line too, right? Soft dumps and then go and lay the body. Like Doughty ate a couple big ones there in that matchup too. Yeah. And I don't expect that to change, right? Like that is going to be the game plan, is wear down the Canadian D.
I mean, they're also Canucks, right? So yeah, but
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So let's talk about that defense battle too, because I think it does get interesting now. I mentioned the trade-off. You lose McAvoy, you gain a Makar relative to the different game. Unfortunately for Canada, Thomas Harley, has to sit out, or where that's at, and he played really well in that game against the United States. And kind of we'll get into the roster snafus that have come up here a little bit later. But what I would say too, so now you lose McAvoy for Team USA, you replace him with Jake Sanderson, who did play against Sweden, and now let's look at Canada versus USA. When you look at those two decors, which one do you look at and you say, okay, that is the one that I want if I have to win this hockey game? That's the team I feel like they have the right collection for this one.
Losing Charlie McAvoy is a big loss. He played very well against Canada. He played very well in this tournament. He's a good player. But I think Jake Sanderson's a very good player too. Very good player. So, that drop down isn't significant in my opinion. I really like Jake Sanderson. I thought he played well against Sweden. He's one of these guys that is like battling for a chance to be on that Olympic team next year. So this is an excellent opportunity for him. I would take the American defense. Number one, I think that they are built a little more well-rounded. They have guys that can, Werenski's been terrific. Adam Fox hasn't been great, but he's had a lot of offensive zone time anyways. He hasn't produced with it. And Jacob Slavin, Noah Hannafin. They've had guys that just do everything for them, and they're big. So I would take that over what Canada has at this point in time. We're still waiting to see Cale Makar. Quite honestly, we haven't seen Cale Makar play like Cale Makar. So if he can all of a sudden play one of the games at the top of his level, I think that changes the complexion completely. But until he starts to do it, we've seen some games where he just hasn't been there, whether that's the illness or just the level of competition, right? It is a lot for these players too. That I won't expect it to happen, but that's kind of the wild card, I would say. If Makar can be one of the five best players on the planet, like we know he can be at times, then that I think would shift my opinion to Canada. But as it stands right now, give me that Team USA blue line.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about Makar, and I also think that it's far from a guarantee. Where is he going to have that level, and how is he feeling? How is he really? What I think is the difference between these two decors, and I agree with you. I'm taking USA's as well, and it's because I have such belief in the Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber experience, essentially, where those two guys are going to be out there against top line matchups. They're going to get the hardest ones, and then you throw in a Zach Werenski and allow him to cook a little bit, where he has been at a Norris Trophy and potentially Hart Trophy level to a certain extent this season with how he's played for Columbus. And then you throw in Sanderson, you throw in Hannafin. You've got a lot. Like, really, you do lose McAvoy, and McAvoy, the reason that I think it's a loss is not just because of the quality that he plays with, but I thought he was such a big part of the response in the game. He got cooked by McDavid, and then he comes back and probably laid the two biggest hits on Connor McDavid in a long time in that game, and also tagged Sidney Crosby with a couple as well. And so the emotional lift that I think a Charlie McAvoy can bring is now lost. But at the same time, you look at Jake Sanderson, elite skater and ability, he can defend, he can produce. But yeah, I look at Slavin played over 25 minutes against Canada. He was on the ice for all three American goals. He
Stifling too,
is,
right?
he
Just
was an animal. He was a beast. And
yeah.
that's the thing is, like, he is it is amazing to me that he is a Lady Bing winner, that he stays so clean without the penalties and everything, because he just plays so well and makes it hard on you to create and to move. And your point about how fast this tournament has been, like having guys like, I think a Sanderson could thrive in this environment. I think we've seen Slavin do it. We've seen Hannafin do it. So like I think the balance is there. And then you look at different guys like Parayko, Doughty, others. It's just like, are they at that same level as where some of these younger U.S. defensemen are? And the answer at this point for me is no. Now we're going to go to probably the easiest breakdown of this, and that is goaltending. And goaltending in any tournament the U.S. has won, goaltending has been a difference. In Canada, sometimes they have won in spite of goaltending, but typically in best on best, they have had great goaltending. They have had, Martin Brodeur, Roberto Luongo. They have typically had among the best goalies in the world. Jordan Binnington likely to get the nod here. He's been okay, not amazing, not terrible. I think in the overtime against was it Sweden, he was very good. But there are different things here. So you've got Connor Hellebuyck on one side, you've got Jordan Binnington on the other. I think I know where you're going to go if you are Cam Robinson and you are feeling who's going to give me the best chance to win. If you had to pick one of those two goalies, and Cam, I'll let you say it anyway, because it is a podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's obvious, right? You take the guy with the Stanley Cup ring who won a Game 7 in this barn, right? You're taking Jordan Binnington. That's the guy, right? He's
Oh,
won a
oh,
championship in this building, right? So that's
oh,
that's the easy answer. Hey, you don't take
oh.
the top goaltender in the world at this point who is also playing at like the peak of his game in Connor Hellebuyck. You don't take that guy. No, it's Hellebuyck, and he's so good, so calm. You just mentioned Roberto Luongo. He reminds me of peak Roberto Luongo right now. It's that when goals get by him, you're almost like, how did that happen? Versus like, how did he make that save? He is literally, he led the league in save percentage last year. He's leading it again this year, two-time Vezina winner, and he might be at his very best at this moment. And it's night and day, right? Like you look at the save percentage numbers at this tournament, it's like, oh, Connor Hellebuyck, whatever he's got, 930, 940, 950, I don't even know. It's high nines. And then it's like Binnington second with like an 865. And then everybody else is below that. Like it's just putrid goaltending except for this greatness in the American net. So, Sam Bennett said yesterday or the day before, he said, we made it too easy on him. which is probably true. They were, passing it way too much rather than just firing pucks and crashing the crease. The goal is, Canada's going to make things harder on Hellebuyck today or tomorrow. And so I asked him that today. I said, what do you think about these guys? I was like, does that change how you're going to operate, or, you're going to get some bumps and things? And he's like, ready to battle. We are ready to battle. So he is just so dialed in for this too. I think we talked about how, the Canadians have a better forward group. Not only do they have to like outplay the American forwards offensively, is that they need to do it significantly because of the Connor Hellebuyck factor. I think is that he can change the complexion of the game. He can win that game for that team by just making 2 or 3 saves that he shouldn't make, and that he's capable of doing just because he is Connor Hellebuyck. So it's a huge, huge advantage for the States.
Yeah, and it's one that feels kind of years in the making as well, because we've talked a lot about this Canadian, the goaltending decline in Canada, and there were a lot of different things that were tried, and didn't really help at all in terms of when they banned European goalies from the CHL, and then they just went to the USHL. Like it was just like
Yeah.
all these different things that have been done, and it hasn't. It wouldn't have worked by now anyway, but it's still, it hasn't necessarily worked. And then you look at what Connor Hellebuyck has done. And the thing that I love about Connor Hellebuyck is that he came through, he's an anomaly on this team because of the development path that he took. He's an anomaly in hockey where he played throughout his high school hockey career, played in Michigan high school hockey, couldn't get in junior hockey, finally gets an open tryout, goes to the North American Hockey League, becomes a starting goalie, gets drafted, goes to UMass Lowell, becomes the best goalie in college hockey, one of the best college goalies ever. And then he goes right into the NHL after, plays in the AHL a little bit and then goes in the NHL and has this remarkable career. And I think, for USA Hockey, you think about the different times where they've been the most competitive. And we mentioned it. Ryan Miller was a difference maker in the 2010 Olympics. The goalie of the tournament there gave him a chance. Mike Richter at the peak of his powers in 1996, post Stanley Cup, still incredible there. And you just even look at the World Juniors and the different goaltending performances that the U.S. has gotten. They need that from Connor Hellebuyck. And I know that a lot has been made about his playoff performance. We're going to talk a little bit about that in our Beyond Belief segment, but what he is doing in his career right now, he is the picture of consistency, and he's making a very strong case. My good buddy Ryan Clark wrote a story for ESPN.com, basically saying like he's on track to be the greatest American goalie that we've ever seen. And there's a lot of debate about who that is right now. Jonathan Quick has the most wins, and Mike Richter had, that run and the World Cup of Hockey and the Stanley Cup. And, Tim Thomas has Stanley Cup and all these different things. And, go back to Frank Brimzek, who had the best nickname ever, Mr. Zero. But that's, way, way behind, way back in the day. But Connor Hellebuyck has become that. Now he has a chance to add to that legacy. And, I think that, he would take the advantage there. We'll get to our predictions about the game later in the show. But, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what do you think? We talked a little bit about it. You said, the Canadian forwards are going to have to play significantly better than the U.S. forwards. I think that there's going to have to be, obviously, goaltending is going to be a factor. We saw the style of game that both teams were able to play. What is the style of game, and what is the way that these teams need to play in order to win? What is going to be the difference in this game in terms of stylistic performance?
Ooh, I mean, you'd think for Canada that they would want to. A perfect game is you keep it away from your net, keep it to the outside, and you penetrate the middle in their zone, right? Like easy X's and O's. Get to the middle, get to the net, keep them from getting to the middle and getting to the net. Both teams are going to look for that. I think the Americans are more open to a little run and gun because they know they have Hellebuyck back there. So I think they're not going to be as afraid to open it up a little bit. I'll say this though, at that Team Canada practice this morning, I don't think I've ever seen again a practice go that hard and that fast. And it's a day before, and these guys they were doing these flow drills where someone was like, you go for a 2-on-1 rush, and then you got to turn around and try to back check on a 2-on-1 as the guy catching up. And these guys were flying out there, and it was like a very, very pacey, very open ice, very moving around. So maybe they're going to be fine opening things up too. But, you feel a little more confident having Connor Hellebuyck back there. But so for America, like I said, soft dumps, attack the body on that Canadian defense. We saw them targeting Drew Doughty, who's lost a bit of a step these days. They're going to get in there, they're going to bang, they're going to try to get a hold of Cale Makar too, getting a piece of these guys. And then for the Canadians, they're going to want to, like Sam Bennett said, make life harder on Connor Hellebuyck. And that means pucks to the inside, pucks to the net, bang, and go look for dirty rebounds, go get in his kitchen, look for screens. Try to get off the periphery, right? It's. I say it to my U11 kids. I'll say it. I'm sure the coaching staff in there, John Cooper and them, are saying the same thing. It's like, don't make it easy. Get to the middle, go and cause disruption. Good things happen when you throw pucks to the net and you get to the net. So that'll probably be the modus operandi for both teams. But I do think the Americans they'll probably they'll be a little more open to open things up offensively, especially because their defense is just so shut down. They get themselves a lead. It's going to be really hard for Canada to score two to get a jump on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the transition game of both teams is going to be a major factor in this game because I think that USA transitions pretty well, even considering that they have that more shutdown D, but they have, Werenski. Now you have Sanderson in the mix. You have Fox. You're able to get pucks up ice pretty quickly, pretty easily. And then you've got the speed with your forwards to make it matter. Whereas Canada, I think that they're the struggle of their decor is going to be getting up the pucks, especially amid that aggressive American forecheck that is going to make it more difficult and be disruptive. So the faster team, I do think, is going to win this game. It's whoever is able to dictate the pace. And in the previous game, that felt a lot more like USA. It felt a lot more like they were able to do it. So that's where I think it's going to go. I do think goaltending is going to play a significant role in this, and I certainly would have more faith in a Connor Hellebuyck. But I do think that that transition game, which USA is really ridden at other levels as well. It's like we're going to use our speed, we're going to use our D, we're going to be mobile. We saw it at the last two World Juniors, even where their D were getting pucks up ice, they were jumping into plays. Like I think that's kind of been the American style, and if you play that successfully, you're going to have a chance to win. Especially when you think you have the best goaltender and you think you have the best decor. You might not have the best forwards, but you're probably pretty solid there. And I mean, man, those net front battles, Cam, I can't wait to see that because I mean that is Sam Bennett's exactly right. You got to go to war between the dots, and if you have a chance, get it through. Maybe it hits something. Maybe you get that dirty rebound. So I'm telling you, man, I cannot wait. I think it's going to be an absolute war. We might see a fight, but it's like, hey, Matthew Tkachuk team kind of needs you on the ice. Maybe don't, if somebody else wants to do it, go ahead. But like those are the different things that I'm super, super excited about to watch in this game, Cam.
Yeah,
So
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm just a terrible transition by me as I get ready. The one thing I did want to ask you before we move on is give me an X factor for Canada and an X factor for USA.
Yeah, I mentioned him already. Cale Makar, right? We need to see Cale Makar get into this tournament. So hopefully these whatever 72 hours off now has been enough for him to, he's looked okay in the skates. And so we need to see him pop though. Cause he could really change the element for the game for Canada there too, but he's just so elite too. Right. And he can be good defensively too, just because he's so fast and he's so strong. When he is clicking at the top of his game, it's hard to say that there's anyone better. Although I might give the edge to Quinn Hughes these days. But and then for Team USA, can I say Quinn Hughes? Can I say Quinny's the X factor for Team USA? Even though I don't think he's going to be here, but can you imagine? Can you imagine? It would blow me away if they just got to add the best D in the world right now. Just slide him in there for the championship. Him and his brother get to high five for a second and go out there. I think that would be so much fun. I wish that the NHL would just be like, yeah, bring him in. He was on the roster. He was hurt. Who cares? Let's get the best players here, right? You guys want Canada? You want Tom Wilson?
They clearly hadn't fully thought out the whole roster situation here.
Oh no, it's a read and react situation. It's been hilarious to watch, right? Like how they originally and you said earlier that Thomas Harley isn't able to play now. Well, I don't even think that's true. I think he is allowed to play. They just chose not to play him in that last game, but I think that they can run 7D if they wanted to, or they could scratch a different defenseman and put him in. Once they brought him in and once they let him in, then they said, okay, fine, whatever, we'll just let him play. And so like
Yeah.
why not do that for Quinn too, right? And so
So
that's
yeah,
I
if that,
tweeted
and that's the thing.
yesterday
If
too.
that is the case, if you're and I said on Twitter yesterday, and people got really upset about this, that it's a made up tournament. And what I meant by that is the NHL made this tournament. They have the
Yeah,
power to make
do
it
whatever they
better.
want.
You know?
Yeah.
and and they already screwed up that part. And yeah, I mean, the thing is if Quinn Hughes comes in, it adds an element of drama, it adds an element of intrigue. He's out of the non-contact jersey in practice with the Canucks. I mean, if Harley is still eligible and Cale Makar is back and all of that is good to go, let him in. I mean, just let him
Let him
in.
in.
Charlie McAvoy
Let him
is
in.
fully out, so
Right?
let him in. And
Oh,
and it would suck because it probably would be Jake Sanderson that gets the short end there, but at the end, it yeah,
he wasn't
you
supposed to
know.
be on the team because Quinn was supposed to be there, right? So it's just like he
Exactly.
got himself a
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
He's with the
That and,
boys. He
and I
gets to,
think that's got
you
to be
know,
part of the yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
And I think that's got to be part of the argument. If you're Bill Guerin, you're saying he was already on the roster.
yeah.
We like so yeah. So NHL take some notes. I would never tell anybody to take notes from the IIHF on operational things, but I would say this should have been a 25 player roster. It should have been two extras, and yes, some guys would have to sit, and that sucks for them, but it would have made a lot of this confusion out there because we're all talking about this Quinn Hughes thing and it might not matter. But hopefully, hey, by the time you listen to this podcast, let us know. Like, that'd be hilarious if Quinn Hughes is on that plane and he's in the building and they just sneak him in and then they're like, maybe they put him in Jake Sanderson's jersey. I don't know.
There it
So
is.
we'll
There it
see what
is.
happens.
Yeah.
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 So, all right, I
Yeah.
got to give my X factor for both. I think my X factor for Team USA is Jacob Slavin. If he can play the shutdown style that we saw him play, especially in the absence of Charlie McAvoy, that is the guy that I think will be the biggest difference maker for this team. I love the way that he plays. I think that he has shown time and time again that you know exactly what you're going to get out of him. He is going to give you consistency. He's going to give you great minutes. I think if you are the Carolina Hurricanes right now and you're watching the way he's playing, you're saying, let's go, baby. With next stop, Stanley Cup. If this guy's getting all our minutes, if we've got Mikko Rantanen going, if we get Sebastian Aho going, we're going to be winning Stanley Cups here. But for Canada, to me, the X factor comes back to that kind of mystique, that Canadian thing that they always seem to find at the right moment. I mean, you think back to Vancouver in 2010 and Sidney Crosby scoring the golden goal. I don't like to think back to that moment very much as an American, but I think
It's me
back
warm
to
and
it and I
fuzzies.
say, yeah, it doesn't make me feel real good. I'll tell you that much. But you go and you say that moment was so poetic and perfect, and all of those different things, and it happens so often. Or there's like the late Eberle goal against Russia in the World Juniors. All these different things, Canada seems to find a way, and so for the U.S., you have to combat that because it's not anything that's really real. It's probably coincidental, but that mystique, that aura, it always seems to come into play. And how do you fight against that? Sometimes it's just fate, and it's just the way the game is. And we'll see. No lucky loonies in the Garden, though. As far as I know, we
I
should
slipped one in
probably
there.
have a metal detector on the ice just to be sure.
Yeah. I
So
slipped one in. I brought it.
yeah.
I brought a lucky loony, maybe a toonie, and I'll just leave it around. I'll just leave toonies and loonies all over that place and see if we can't get some good luck around there.
All right. All right. Now we're going to move into our Beyond Belief segment here. We're going to blow through these. It's all Four Nations related. And I had one, Cam, I switched it up on the fly on you, but I had one because we just talked about Quinn Hughes, but we're going to talk about this instead. Thursday night's game will go down as one of the iconic moments in the USA Canada rivalry. Now, this is, again, everybody, beyond belief. We're saying this is a statement. If do you believe it or do you think it's beyond belief? Cam, Thursday night's game, tomorrow night's game, the championship game will go down as an iconic moment in this rivalry.
Absolutely. I can't help. I can't think anything but like that. The anticipation for that game on Saturday night pales in comparison to the anticipation for this game. And those boys delivered. There is no love lost between these two teams. Hagel today was chirping the Kachuk brothers for having a group chat about when they were going to fight. And Kachuk's like, well, I guess they're not close teammates if they don't have a group chat going. Like, they are just beaking off at each other on the benches, on the ice, in the media. These guys hate each other right now. We asked Connor Hellebuyck, you talking to any of your buddies? They're playing, no, only Kyle Connor. I'm not talking to anybody else from any other countries right now. They are so dialed in. They want this. They want this. This has been 10 years of waiting for best on best competition. For some of these guys, they've never had an opportunity. For other guys, this is their last opportunity, right? Are we ever going to see Brad Marchand in a Team Canada jersey again? He's in his home barn right now. I'm hoping he's going to have the game of his tournament because he's been a little quiet. I think it's going to be. I believe it. I think that is a true statement. This is going to go down as one of the iconic moments that we have seen in this great, great rivalry, and this is just going to be another one in the long list.
If you would have asked me this last week, and we talked about it last week, I would have said no chance. There wasn't buzz. And then all of a sudden the puck dropped and everything changed because everybody got to see. And then you have that moment. They built this into something, and this is all on the players. This is entirely on the players. They made this matter in such a way that I did not think was possible. And the best thing about this is going to make 2026 matter that much more. The Olympics matter that much more because of the table that they just set with the four nations. So yes, I agree with you. We're talking 96 World Cup. We're talking 2010 Olympics. We're talking 2014. We're talking all of these moments. And you go back to Canada Cups and whatever else. For the game at this time, you have not captured attention in this way in so long that, yes, regardless of result, this is going to go down as a great moment and an iconic moment in this rivalry.
I'm so excited.
Mr. Robinson, I turn it over to you, my friend.
I'm just so excited. Okay. Connor Hellebuyck, his playoff reputation will be improved in the Four Nations final. That he's going to play so well that is going to improve him as being a guy who can't get it done. Because let's be frank, he's never won anything. He's never won a championship at any level. This would be his first if he can pull it off. Is this going to change his playoff reputation as a big game goaltender?
I think it has to. Otherwise, what's the narrative going to be, Cam? What's the narrative going to be if it's anything else? So I think this will improve his stock, mainly because we've seen him so far. He looks like his old self. You've talked about how dialed in he has seemed, and you look back at the playoff numbers for him in his career. He's in a 917 for his regular season save percentage, a 910. Not terrible, but the last couple of years have not been as good in the playoffs. I do think that this is going to be a moment that is seminal in his career. It's going to be something that people talk about. I feel like this is going to be a turning point for him. And so that is where I say, even if the U.S. does not win, I don't think it's going to have anything to do with how Connor Hellebuyck plays, because I think he's going to deliver one of his best performances just based on what we've seen, the momentum and how he's playing right now. I think that this will shift the perception on his ability to be a big game goalie. He just has to have many opportunities to do it. So let's see him now in this setting, basically like a game 7.
I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna say it's beyond belief. I'm gonna say that international play, even though I know this isn't technically, doesn't affect how players are viewed with club teams, right? Roberto Luongo has a couple Olympic gold medals, still known as a guy who couldn't get it done in the playoffs, right? Because he lost that final game in 2011 and got swept the next. He just didn't show up when the chips are down with his club team. Didn't matter that he had a gold medal or two. When you look back on him and the perception that he had. So I'm going to say that one's beyond belief. That even if Hellebuyck comes out here and pitches a 50 save shutout, that won't change his perception as a big game goalie in NHL playoffs.
I like that answer. I think that's completely fair. And I think the Luongo example, again, now we're talking about the Luongo comparisons again. I think it makes all the sense in the world, my friend. All right. So now we throw it back to Mr. Canada over here. And I say, Sidney Crosby has another iconic moment in him. I mean, let's think about him. Let's think about the different ones that he's had. Let's think about the 2010 golden goal. Let's think about even getting that empty net goal the other day against Finland
Huge.
in a game where all of a sudden Canada is like, is that an iconic moment? No, but is it a Sidney Crosby moment? Hell yeah, it is. So I mean, like, Cam, does he got any more left in him? Have we seen the last of the Sidney Crosby hero moments?
Absolutely not. He's got years left of him. This guy is unbelievable, right? Like after that after that overtime game, him and Nate Mack are the first guys on the ice for morning skate. Most guys were taking the option. Some of them thought they were going to just maybe have a soak or something. Today, I'm at skate. First guys out on the ice: Sidney Crosby and Nate McKinnon. He is so singularly focused on winning, and especially now at the tail end of his career. The Stanley Cups are done unless he moves out of Pittsburgh. Is that an opportunity to win something, to win that last game of something, right? I think that inspires him to a level that few have. And so how could you ever bet against this guy to not have another iconic moment in there, right? Like you're not going to hang that loss against Team USA on Sidney Crosby, but he did make a bad play that led to the 2-1 goal that was the difference. And so
Right.
he knows it. Everybody knows it. And he came back and he played a strong game against Finland, and he laid the body in open ice and got that goal that they really needed it. They needed to settle things down. So no, I think, if this game's going to overtime, like, I'm picking for Team Canada. How do you not pick 87, right? Like he just gets it done. He just gets it done. What do you think?
Every time. Yeah. I mean, I think that's when I talked about that aura and the mystique. A lot
Yeah.
of it is tied to number 87. I mean, having a guy like that on your roster, iconic moments are habit for him. Like it's insane how much that has been part of his identity as a player. So, as scared as I am of that as an American, and certainly, like we're all waving our flags right now. I think a lot of us, even in the media, we've kind of like let it drop because it's like, hey, it's, and leave politics out. Just if you are a hockey fan, it does not get better than this. But can it get better? I toss it back to you, my friend, to give us the last of our beyond belief questions
All
slash
right,
statements.
Chris. All right. Okay. A Team USA win in the finals here will go further for building the game than a Canadian victory would. I think it's
Now
a
I
layup. I
know
think it's an easy answer.
I I bet you think you know what I'm going to say,
I do.
and my answer is beyond belief because I already think it happened. I
Uh,
think it happened. The impact that this tournament was going to make is now set in stone already,
yeah.
because I think everybody that watched that game, yes, they saw the fights, but then they saw the speed. Then they saw I think regardless of what happens in the final, and there's no question, there's more room to grow in the United States than there is in Canada in terms of that. Like that is a US win will grow it. But I think that what this tournament can accomplish has already been accomplished by that first game. And the reason I say that is, how many people do you know in your life that knew you were a hockey fan, and this is to all of our listeners, that knew you were a hockey fan and said, oh my gosh, did you see that game? And they were people that you never would have talked hockey with before. I was actually surprised. So they said 4.4 million viewers, which I was kind of surprised. I thought that number was a little bit low, 4.4 in the US. And then, another 10 in 10 total in North America, 10.1 million people watching that game. But I mean, the conversation that it started, even if they weren't watching the game, now it's like, oh shoot, I got to watch that. They created this moment. So, and I think that builds, like I said, I think that the real factor will be in the Olympics, because that will then, I mean, the 2010 Olympics, I'm pretty sure had a 25 million person viewership in the United States. It was something, it was super, well, it might not have been that high, but it was record numbers for hockey in the United States, and that for that 2010 game. And so you're setting the table for that really large growth. But I think that anything that they could have accomplished, like a championship would be icing on the cake, because in the end it is a Four Nations championship. It's not an Olympic gold medal and those things. But if If you are doing what you're doing, like I just think that if the US wins, it's gonna matter. If Canada wins, what did we just see? The very best NHL players putting on the most spectacular showcase of hockey that we've really ever seen. And so this is hockey at its best. And now way, 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 way more people have been exposed to it. And USA could not do that without Canada. Canada could not do that without USA. That's what made it great. So that's why it's beyond belief.
I like that. That's an excellent answer because I thought you were going to easily say yes. Of course, that's a true statement. I mean, just on minor hockey kids that are signed up, right? I think it's about 500,000 in the US and it's about
Yeah.
500,000 in Canada. And the US has 10 times as many people, right? Like the potential for growth is so massive that I think I think that USA winning is going to inspire some kids. Maybe not as much as like the '80 Miracle on Ice or Gretzky coming to California and like these things that can really jumpstart 10, 15 years down the road. We see that, but I think it could. But I think you might be onto something that it's already happened, that it's already been
Yeah.
exposed now, and now I'll be really curious to see how many people watch this game in the States too, because not everybody knew what was going on, right? They saw it on social media and all the articles and all the video everywhere and been like, holy smokes, right? Like American politicians who've probably never seen a game in their lives are tweeting about it. And, football
Yeah.
players and basketball players being like, what is going on in hockey, right? And like that is just getting spread around the continent. And so now everybody knows that it's coming. And so it'll be really, I'll be interested to see if that number doubles or something like that for American eyes on this, because, in Canada,
Yeah.
it's, they're all watching
Yeah.
already, right? Like that's, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it will be interesting because it's on ESPN versus on ABC, and there's always, even that makes a difference. But at the same time, the conversation around this game, the different things like the build up and having these extra couple of days to just continue to build and have those guys go and chirping each other in the press conferences, it's built it up. But really, the biggest winner isn't the US or Canada, it's the game. We finally got it.
Mm.
We finally got it at a point at the right time and everything else. And that's why I want to just quickly kind of talk about the future as well. And what we've learned from the Four Nations, what we can improve upon. And as I said earlier, the reason this worked is because of the players. The players brought it. They made it matter. They brought the intensity, and then everyone, they forced people, they grabbed people by the lapels and said, watch this and watch what we're going to do with it. But there are things that we can do better. And now we know the 2028 World Cup of Hockey is coming back. We'll have 2026 Milan Cortina, the Winter Olympics. The biggest thing that definitely has to improve in any NHL best on best going forward is the roster rules. We have got to get the roster rules figured out. Cam, it's so confusing. Do you have a solution? What would you do? I know what I think. Like I at least could have done a little bit better in this situation.
Yeah, there's always going to be nitpicky things, right? And so roster, absolutely. I think the lesson is that you need eight. You need eight on the blue line, probably, right? You talk to any good NHL GM, they're going to say you want to be eight deep on your blue line no matter what heading into the playoffs. Nine's even better. So maybe you got a little taxi squad, right? Maybe you got a little taxi squad hanging out with the boys that you're like, you know what, you three fellas, you're only seeing action if we get injuries or we get hit with the flu bug, but you're there, right? So sorry, no Cabo trip for you this year, but hey, maybe you get a piece of this action. And maybe some guys say no to it. I'd be very surprised.
Right.
But give them that option, right? Like, hey, you're going to come, but you're a black ace, right? Like you're not scheduled to skate, but then you're there, and then have it freely open. I don't even care. Like, say somebody's playing crappy, whatever, we'll bring an ace in, and it doesn't matter, right? Like, have them available. So I think that that's a number one thing. Another one that I immediately got texted from a couple of like big time media people when I tweeted that they fumbled not swapping the game times on that final day of the round robin.
Oh yeah.
Because right, and I get it that they couldn't at the last minute, but so my solution would have been that in future years you would have those as that TBD, right? Like we've all been to kids tournaments, and it's like, yeah, maybe it depends on how it shakes out, right? And we even see it like in other sports. Well, they'll leave it open, right? The NFL does it too. They'll change game time starts for what's more important as we're bleeding into the playoff run. And so to have that, if you could have put USA Sweden first, And then the Swedes win it in regulation. Now all of a sudden everybody and their dog knows, like, okay, that game means something. Everybody's into that game. And then it's like Canada, Finland has to win in regulation. They have to win in regulation. So imagine what would happen if that game was tied, right? Like, what do they do? They both pull in their goalies, as Steve Werrier, the former AGM of the Panthers, suggested. Like, do they both yank their goalies and hope for them to be the first one to get it in, right? Like, that would have been a lot of fun. So I think that that's another little nitpicky thing that you could look at in the future if you really want to maximize eyes and excitement for an event. But by and large, they just have knocked this thing out of the park. They've even been feeding us well, Chris. They've been taking
Oh,
care of us.
wow.
It's been a good setup from top to bottom here, I gotta say.
Yeah, just remember, media starts with me. So
Yeah.
there is a me and an I in media, actually. So yeah, but I think you're right. Like, basically, we can nitpick, and really the roster thing is the only thing that I think was an actual fumble where really the not having enough players, you can't have that, and then you run into these issues, and it's like, I know they don't want people sitting around all week, but honestly, for both for the health and safety of the players, and then also for the logistics. I mean, the fact that we're talking about the possibility of Quinn Hughes flying cross country after flying back from wherever he was, resting, and probably in Michigan, doing all that
New
stuff,
Jersey.
like, or new, yeah. So there you go. Like, it's like, it's not easy. So anyway, you've got that. So we'll set that aside. The other thing, now we know with the World Cup of Hockey, you have to get the more nations involved. You have to get, we need to see Leon Draisaitl in one of these things. We need to
Mm-hmm.
see David Pasternak, and that's already underway. So we don't have to necessarily worry about that. What I am thinking about, though, is if we do another World Cup of Hockey in September, there's no way it generates this kind of buzz. You talk
Mm-mm.
so much about the timing. The timing was perfect. Post Super Bowl, nothing much else going on. The doldrums of the regular season, when you're just kind of like, the playoff race is just far enough away to not care about it a ton. And then, it's just, so for me, if they're going to do the World Cup of Hockey, it has to be in season. And I don't know logistically how you do it, but it has to be this February timeline, similar to when the Olympics would be, is when it's got to be. Does it not, Cam? I mean, how else do you do it?
That's when they're going to do it. They're going to do it in February. It's going to be February. We're going to see it every 2 years, right? And it's going to be. And I think it's good that they're spreading them out, because especially, these super elite players often will play on really good teams that go on long playoff runs, and
Yep.
the less break for them, and then they don't get that break when everybody else gets 10 or 12 days off to go down and get some sun and some fun. So every second year, right? But then you got to nix the All-Star game, please, right? Is that you can't
Yep.
make Connor McDavid come every 2 years and play his heart out, and then every second year he's got to show up and do an All-Star game. No, you let that guy head down south and chill out for a little bit too, right? So no, I think it's got to be midseason. And it is literally perfect timing. This is the best time, post Super Bowl, pre March Madness, NBA All-Star break. Like, you're just not competing with anything. Like, it's just the world. Like, everything's consumed by hockey and Four Nations right now. Like, it's so much fun. They can't mess with it
Yeah.
now. They got to keep doing that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. There's really no choice. And the thing is like, there have been talks about, okay, how do you do, maybe like you do a portion of it in the spring, or I mean in the fall. You maybe do a qualifier. You get, maybe the Four Nations that you had here are in, and they're bought into this one. So there's a lot of different things, but the game has never been stronger than it is right now, both in the US and Canada, but internationally. On top of that, there's such a great level of talent outside of North America that we need to continue to foster. And I think doing more best on best tournaments like this is there. I agree. It has to be every 2 years, with the Olympics in there, 2 World Cups, 2 Olympics in that cycle. I do think will really do a lot. Part of the intrigue of this tournament, though, is, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And we think about all those years, though, that we missed out on Sidney Crosby and playing with Connor McDavid and playing with Nathan McKinnon and having these opportunities and the various things. And so now we've got this chance to really make it work better. And I think they will. So, Cam, we're going to get into our predictions here in a second, but I just want to reiterate, going into this thing, I was like, kind of, yeah, we'll see. Skeptical. And now that I'm fully bought it, like it's the same way I felt about Team North America. I was like, this doesn't sound like a great idea. Those guys are going to get killed. Oh, no, never mind. They're beating Sweden and all these other things. So the NHL has gotten this like pretty darn right. So the last thing before we get into our predictions, how do you sustain it? Like, how do we keep this going? How do we keep this momentum? What is it going to take for this to continue?
I mean, you're right, and like so many things have come together to make it so great too, and not the least of it is the political climate too, right? Like the talk of
Right.
tariffs and
Fair.
annexation, like that has really driven a lot of the attention for this too, right? I saw someone tweet like, "Put them on the line. Tariffs are on the line tonight. Okay, whoever wins, you're tariffing the other country. That's just how it is, right? And the other one's got to just eat it." It's going to be difficult to find that again because it's also, we mentioned too, is that the players have just been this pent up energy to play a best on best. And now that's been satiated, right? And so will it be as strong next time around? I think you just have to keep that kind of intensity with the players. And I think that comes, it's holistic, it's internal, is that they are competitors. And so if you put it on the line, this is a best on best for glory for your nation, is that should keep the players going 110%. So you might not be able to mimic this level of all around global things, geoeconomic stuff too, and all that, but I think you can keep that momentum going by just maintaining that you're playing for a title and an international title. And I think these guys, when it is the very best, they can't help themselves, is that they're going to want to play and, as Brandon Hagel said, run their head through a wall, do whatever it takes, right? Drew Doughty said it too.
Yeah.
If they asked him, would you fight? I'll do anything for my country. Like, these guys are going off to war here. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is pretty incredible to watch where this has gone and how this has gone, and just everything about it. It's really really incredible to see, what we've been able to watch. And I think so the NHL does bear some responsibility now to sustain the momentum. We have the trade deadline coming up. Make a few trades, guys. I mean, like, let's keep that
Yeah, open them
interesting
up.
conversation going. Just like, let's mix it up. A strong playoff performance, a strong playoffs, that's another step in the right direction. You've attracted the attention. Now you've got to keep it. And really, there's nothing you can do to kind of manufacture that. It just has to happen organically. It's but that's in the short term, that's what you can do. Whatever happens in this game on Thursday, that is the narrative going all the way to Milan Cortina. That is going to be talked about all the way. Drill that into people's heads. Whoever loses is coming in with looking for revenge. Whoever wins is looking to maintain. Canada's got this gold medal streak going when it's best on best. So all of these different things these storylines that you can kind of pull at. There won't be fights in the Olympics, but as long as the NHL keeps doing these, we'll probably be able to see some fights there. Yes. By the way, if you do fight in the Olympics, it is a game misconduct and often an automatic suspension. So maybe don't do it there. But anyway, beyond that, I think we've got a lot of fun things coming up. So Cam, let's get to it. I don't want to have, we don't really necessarily need to make predictions so much as we need to take a side. And because we are living on geographic lines, we've kind of already made our predictions earlier anyway. So, go back to our old one. Canada wins how? That's going to be my question to you. Canada wins this how?
Yeah, this one's going to be a little complex for the listener, so bear with me here, okay? The only way Canada wins this game is if they score more goals than they allow. Okay? So
Whoa.
that is like 1-2-3 versus 1-2, something like that. No, they need Jordan Binnington to be good. They don't need him to be great. They need him to be good. He can't let a weak one in. Okay, how about that? No leakers, no leakers out of Bennington. And then, the big dog's got to eat, right? And that's just how it's got to be. Is that your best players need to be your best players. So if Bennington's good and your best players are your best players, I think Canada takes this home. It's going to be very difficult to beat this team twice in a week, right? Canada lost to the Americans in 2010 in prelims. They couldn't do it in the gold medal game, right? Like it's going to be really difficult to knock this team off because they will make the adjustments, right? They'll make the adjustments from that first game, and they have the talent and they have the experience to do it. So those will probably be the big factors for me. How about you?
Yeah, and so now I'm going to say, here's how Team USA is going to win. I mean, obviously, I think you just need Connor Hellebuyck to be himself. If that's the first thing, you build it from the net out. And really, I do think that the US is going to have success from the net out. It's going to start with Hellebuyck. It's going to be you're going to have to win the transition battle. You're going to have to win the neutral zone. If you're Team USA, you have speed, you have a lot of skill. And you have guys that can move the puck up the ice. You need to try and be the one that set the pace of this game. Canada can play at the pace. That's the thing. It's not like you can overwhelm them with the pace, but being the better team at the pace is really where I think the U.S. has to go. That heaviness has to be there. The passion has to be there. It has to be done managed. You can't just go out and just haul off. And maybe the best way is just like that first game started, get it out of the way early and then go play hockey if it has to be that way. I don't think it necessarily does. I don't think it really helps them to have guys in the box. I think with a trophy on the line, it's going to be a lot different. But I think that's key. If Quinn Hughes is in, use him the way that he's supposed to be used, give him a lot of minutes, give him the opportunity to move pucks and all those different things. If he's not, a whole lot of Jacob Slavin and a whole lot of Brock Faber against the top lines. And then lastly, I think this is an opportunity for Austin Matthews. I've liked the way that he's played when he's been healthy. He obviously sat out the last game. I think that he's a factor. He's got the size. He's got the skill. This is an opportunity for him to have an iconic moment. He really hasn't had that as an NHL player yet. He's had some great moments in his junior days and other things like that. He obviously had his tremendous NHL debut that we still talk about. But this is an opportunity for him to take charge and an opportunity to really put both himself and USA Hockey on the map. So I think that he's going to be a very key factor in this game as well if the U.S. is going to win. But boy, I can't wait for this one, Cam. I mean, this is going to be one of the great showcases that we have ever had in this sport. I think that who would have thought that? But we're talking about a new, the NHL does that new golden era. They do that
I
great
thought
thing.
that.
It's incredible, but I think this is going to be one of the absolute great moments in NHL and international hockey history. You're going to be there to witness it, my friend, and I cannot wait for that for you. But yes, this is going to be really, really, really fun. So, Cam, I hope you have a lot of fun there. I hope that you feel that building buzzing and all the adrenaline that you're able to consume from that stays with you for the rest of the season here. Any
Oh
closing
man.
thoughts on this incredible game? And also let us know what we can expect from you at Elite Prospects.
My closing thought is I never thought that this wasn't going to be amazing. Like way back when I was first planning my travel schedule for the year with my boss, Peter Sidner there, and he brought up, he's like, you got to go to the Four Nations. And like, I usually go to all the scouting events. I don't go to these, pro level events usually. Sometimes they send me to like all-star games and stuff, but I was ecstatic the moment he brought it. I was like, oh yes. I assumed it was going to be a best on best competition and these guys were going to do it. And then everybody else started being like, it's going to be an all-star event. I'm going to pat myself on the back and say that I knew from day one. I didn't know it was going to be maybe this good though, because I don't think anybody expected this level of intensity. But yeah, so I'm so thrilled to be able to cover this. Is just like one of my crowning achievements in life. And I'm sure marrying my wife and having my 3 kids, they'll accept that this is number one now. Just kidding, family. But yeah, and for us, it's like I'm over here just churning out content a mile a minute. So loads and loads of articles as things come up. I'm writing, I'm making videos, I'm talking to people. We're having a great time. We'll do this for a couple more days, and maybe I'll take a minute off when I get home and hang out with those lovely family members of mine, and then get right back at it and get back into the scouting season. Get ready for those U18s coming up.
Yeah, we got to get back to reality. We got to start talking about all these up and comers that are hopefully going to be in the Four Nations eventually. But yeah, I can't wait to read more of your coverage. For us over at FloHockey, we're going to be having Four Nations coverage as well. We've got a couple pieces up. I just did a retrospective on USA versus Canada, best on best, all-time results, and some of the best moments. And then also, we will have a live file going for the game. You can watch, you can kind of follow along. I'll have some thoughts in that as well. Different analysis as the game is going on. But boy, cannot wait for Thursday night. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this semi-early edition of Called Up the Prospects podcast. And also want to send out, a big thanks to everybody, but especially our partners at Wonderful Pistachios, our presenting sponsor. Pistachios are known for their protein power and better for you unsaturated fats for a combination that may keep you feeling fuller, longer. We thank Wonderful Pistachios for being a presenting sponsor of Called Up the Prospects podcast. Cam, let's see. Here we go. We got that bet coming up. So I fully expect you to be wearing your red, white, and blue in the very near future. And I am hoping not to make red part of my color except for the red Flow logo. That's all I'm hoping to have here on the red side. But honestly, enjoy yourself at this incredible moment for international hockey. And man, buddy, let's keep having fun here. We'll get back together next week, talk a little bit about the Four Nations, and then get right back to that NHL draft stuff. Can't wait to get it going. But have a ball, buddy. I can't wait for you.
Thanks, appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Called Up the Prospects podcast, presented by Wonderful Pistachios. I'm Chris Peters for Cam Robinson. We'll see you next time.